right, thanks for joining me for lesson 42. This is for the week of 2/22 in February, last week in February. So we're entering March next week. Woo! Made it through February. Uh, it's a full week this week, um, and we'll be working on our essay number 3 rough draft, which will be due next Friday on the 5th. That is a quick turnaround from the outline assignment, which was due on the 19th. The reasoning for that quick turnaround is the outline effectively allowed you to write the majority of your rough draft. So if you do that outline assignment, you're really only going to be adding 3 or 4 sentences to get to a complete rough draft. I'm also going to introduce you to an extra credit poetry assignment. We're going to start doing these extra credit poetry assignments as well as the extra credit the things they carried assignments. This is with the goal of ramping up as we get closer to the ACT and having space to work on concepts that you're going to need to pass that test. Our informational lesson today is going to be a quick discussion of different claims and counterclaims that align to our assignment for this essay, and that will be the class. Our old assignments at this point include that outline, so if you haven't turned in your outline, you're potentially missing out on a mastery grade. The green old assignments are all progress grades. Make sure that you're completing that ILP in your ILP class. That is a specific Google class that you need to go to complete. Also, upcoming assignments, so your voice and choice number 3 is due at the end of this week. That is the only assignment that is due for a grade this week is voice and choice number 3, so make sure you go in and knock that out. Please do record your voice if at all possible. We're putting together a collection of these recordings, and we're going to be using those for our final project in the class. So the more of those you have, the more robust and complex and interesting your final project can be for the class. We're going to keep doing them as we go through the year, though. So you have some space to add to them. Essay 3 rough draft again is going to be due next Friday, and your things they carried readings are going to be due mid-April. Let's take a look at our learning targets for this lesson. So for writing, we're going to construct our rough draft using the completed Essay 3 outline. This means you can create a complete rough draft for Essay 3 using your outline. We're going to lean really heavily on your outline assignment while we're working on those rough drafts. For our literature lesson today, we're going to distinguish between literary techniques and figurative language in a poem, specifically one literary technique and one type of figurative language. We're going to keep doing that probably each week as we get closer to the ACT and look at different kinds of literary techniques and different kinds of figurative language. And this means that you could recognize the difference between literary techniques and figurative language in poetry. For our informational lesson today, we're going to critique a couple examples of thesis statements and counterclaims for essay number 3. And this means that we can generate our own thesis statements that include counterclaims after discussing and looking at a couple different examples. The week structure, as per usual, is a lesson on Mondays and Tuesdays that's pre-recorded and posted. Same deal for Thursdays and Fridays, with Wednesdays being some office space. There's also space between 10 and 10:45 to do English remediation, and I'll post that as well. All right, our third voice and choice assignment is due this week on Friday. The voice prompt for everyone is, what is poetry to you? Or you can write and share your own poem, or you can read a poem that you really dig or lyrics from a song that you like. Don't forget to introduce the author when you do that so that I can Google them too and read more of their stuff if I really dig it. The 10 different paths have been updated, so if you're finished with voice and choice 1 and 2, you can move on to voice and choice 3 and answer the new prompt. All right, so our writing learning target today is to take a couple moments to discuss the rough draft and how to do that. So to complete this assignment, you're going to be, again, filling all of the areas shaded in with a pink color. And in this assignment, you're going to convert your outline to a rough draft. You're going to keep the structure of the outline, and you're only going to need to add a few sentences to increase the overall flow of the essay. So what I mean by that is, you should be able to copy-paste most of your outline in order into your rough draft, and then we're just going to be going through the work of formatting it correctly as an essay. So as it stands now, it's a collection of statements, claims, counterclaims, evidence in your rough draft. If you copy that straight into the rough draft, it will be a very rough draft. You're going to need to do a little bit of editing to get it into essay format. And that means you're going to need to be removing the phrase like claim or counterclaim. You're going to need to be indenting your paragraphs. You're going to need to be making it into paragraph format, and you're going to need it to be in 5-paragraph format before you turn it in for your final draft. So getting it as close to a final draft as you can now will save you time in editing later. Just a quick reminder of what's been past due and what's upcoming. So the only things that are upcoming right now are that voice and choice number 3 on Friday and the essay number 3 rough draft. It looks like we have a lot of things, but it's important to remember that those readings really only ask you to make 3 comments per reading. So that's those are all 3 quick assignments. The ILP is a more beefy assignment, and if you can knock that out as soon as possible by going to that Google Classroom, that would be great. All right, so let's look at our literature learning target for today. We're going to be distinguishing between literary techniques and figurative language in a poem. And this means we can recognize the difference between literary techniques and figurative language. And this is an extra credit assignment. It's ACT practice. Also, I did figure out how to do extra credit in Google that doesn't maybe give you anxiety. So in Google Classroom, this will look like an ungraded assignment. And in Infinite Campus, this will be exempt until you complete it. So this will not hang over you as a missing assignment in Google Classroom. I have discovered how to do extra credit now. So what you'll be doing in this assignment is you're going to be finding examples of one literary technique and one kind of figurative language in 3 different poems. The literary technique that you're looking for is enjambment. Enjambment's where you continue a sentence beyond a line break, a couplet or a stanza without an expected pause. So here's an example. This is from Romeo and Juliet. The example quote is, "When he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun." Period. That was one sentence that is broken up on different lines. So when he shall die, comma, take capital T him out and cut him out in little stars. He will make the face of heaven so fine that, fine is not the end of that sentence, and that is not the beginning of a new sentence. We've just broken a sentence up halfway through. So what you'll be doing is you'll be highlighting in yellow examples of enjambment, where a sentence continues from one line to the next without a period. All right, that's enjambment. The other thing you'll be looking for, the type of figurative language you'll be looking for, is a metaphor. So a metaphor is like a simile, but without any connecting words. So it simply connects 2 different things. For example, he was a wily fox, or she cried a river of tears. She did not literally cry a river of tears, she figuratively cried a river of tears. He was not literally a wily fox, he was figuratively a wily fox. So to complete this assignment, you're going to highlight 2 examples of each device, total, using the 3 poems below. So you'll need 2 yellow highlighted examples of enjambment, and you'll need 2 blue highlighted examples of metaphor. So you're going to need 4 highlighted items total for credit, 2 yellow and 2 blue. I also have links attached to each of these poems so that you can listen to the poems while you go, because poetry is better heard out loud sometimes. So that is the extra credit assignment. You're highlighting 2 examples of enjambment, and you're highlighting 2 examples of metaphor. Enjambment in blue, enjambment in yellow, metaphor in blue. All right, a quick reminder, ILP completion is past due. You need to log into that Google class for ILPs to complete that. If you need help with that, you can always log in between 12 and 2:30 on Wednesdays, and I can walk you through that. If you're stuck on your outline, I can help you with that too on Wednesdays. Don't mind at all. These are really interesting, and it's a lot of fun to work on these. All right, so we're going to look at a couple example thesis statements and counterclaims for essay number 3. And this means that you can generate a thesis that includes a counterclaim. So in class, we put together a bunch of different examples. These are the examples that we put together in class. So these are kind of familiar because you were in the live class. I apologize for them being familiar, but we're going to kind of go through them here. So let's start with number 1. The claim in number 1 is, I believe that society teaches people the difference between right and wrong. So we're starting from this idea that society teaches people the difference between right and wrong. That is our claim. So to have a counterclaim from society, we're going to need to look at individuals. So our counterclaim is individuals have free will to choose right or wrong. So our counterclaim is individually based. Our claim is group based. Claim says society teaches people right or wrong. Our counterclaim has to be about individuals. So if we start with groups, our counterclaim needs to be individuals because it needs to be the opposite of a group. Our first support here is going to go back to the idea that society teaches people the difference between right and wrong. So our first support says society functions through laws and expectations of doing the right thing. Okay, so we're back at society. How does society teach people? It's laws that society imposes that teach people. All right, we need one more example of how society teaches people the difference between right and wrong. People can't survive alone and groups are necessary. So this supports our original claim that society teaches people the difference between right and wrong because it argues that groups are necessary and people can't survive alone. It's kind of a weak support, but it's still a support of this original claim that society is where right and wrong comes from. Okay, that was our first example. We have a group claim, starting with a group claim and having an individual counterclaim. The next example is going to be the opposite. So in example number 2, our claim is, I believe that individuals determine right or wrong for themselves. So here, we're starting with individuals. So our counterclaim is going to be about societies. Now, we had some really good conversations in class about how this is reductionist. This is oversimplifying a complicated thing, something as complicated as morality and ethics. That's absolutely correct. So like if you need to go off and make a different argument than individuals versus society, that's cool. I think that you can totally do that and do that comfortably. If you have a good claim and a good counterclaim. If you're stuck on this assignment and you're having a hard time coming up with what you want to say, I think this is a really good way to go. It is to decide whether or not you believe it's individuals or society that produces morality. So in example number 2, we say, I believe that individuals determine right or wrong for themselves. We're starting from this individualistic space. And in the counterclaim, we're saying society tells us what right or wrong is, directly contradicting our claim. Now, our first support down here is got to be about individuals. So we're gonna kind of address our counterclaim in this one, where we say society is made up of individuals. So we're kind of addressing directly this counterclaim, which is a good way to do it. Then below in our second support, we're going to say individuals choose whether or not to follow society. So now we're going into even more explanation about how individuals determine right or wrong for themselves. You can see how support 1 and support 2 are both tied to the individual claim. I've underlined it too in there so you can kind of see it even more clearly. In claim 1, we're talking about individuals. In support 1 and support 2, we're talking about individuals. In the counterclaim, we're talking about society. We're kind of pitting individuals against society when we're using this scaffolding. All right, let's move on to example number 3. So for example number 3, we're going to go back to society, but we're going to use some different terms because you don't have to say society when you mean society. You can mean smaller groups. So if a person grows up in a household where they are taught right and wrong, they'll know the difference. That household is a stand-in for society. The counterclaim here, individuals choose for themselves what right and wrong are, or what right and wrong is. Our counterclaim is still going to be individuals versus society, even without the word society. So we have a household standing in for society. We have a group versus an individual still. And that works just as well. Our first support is going to be about that household. It's going to be about that group, that local family group. So our first support says younger generations benefit from the wisdom of older generations. Cool beans. That is about groups. Older generations, multiple people, and not the person themselves. Then our final claim, without older generations to provide an example of right or wrong, young folks can end up going around spreading negativity. That was a student-generated support, and it's really strong. So we're talking about without older generations, without society, individuals do the wrong thing. So we're kind of specifically responding to individuals here, saying an individual will do the wrong thing without society, while supporting that OG claim of households. And again, support number one and support number two, older generations, a household. We're talking about the community. We're staying laser focused on our original green claim with our yellow and our orange. The yellow and the orange should always support that original green claim, and the blue should always contradict it when you're doing an argumentative paper like this with a counterclaim. So on to our last example. We're going to go back to, we're going to stay with communities one more time. Communities teach right and wrong to people. So we're arguing from this position of a community is where that comes from. Our counterclaim, again, the opposite of a community in this structure is an individual. Individuals choose between right and wrong for themselves. We're contravening, we're contradicting our claim. And then below, we're going to talk more about communities, specifically parents as a small community that you exist with, passing on their concept of right and wrong to their children. And then people choose their actions based on the approval of the group. This one's actually really strong because it ties back into the Zimbardo reading that we did. It's a mildly satanic thing. Yeah, so it ties back into the Zimbardo reading that we did. There we go. So again, the yellow and the orange are going to be supporting our original claim that communities teach people right and wrong. The yellow and the orange are not supporting the blue. The blue is in direct contradiction to everything around it. But what it does is it's going to show that you understand the argument against what you're talking about, and you've nested it right inside of your essay. All right, so that's an example of how we're structuring the claims and counterclaims portion of this assignment, which is the first part of the assignment. Again, real quick reminder, that ILP completion is past due. Please knock that out in the ILP class whenever you get a chance. If you need help with that, you can log in on Wednesdays to get help with that. Those readings are really quick assignments. Voice and choice number 2 is also past due. That's also a very quick 2 recordings or responding to 2 prompts. The only beefy assignments really that we've had so far this year are the outline that we've been working on for the past 3 weeks. We've hit our learning targets. The outcomes are going to be the rough draft due next Friday, that extra credit poem number 1 that is due in April and mid-April along with your other extra credit assignments.